And ladies and gentlemen, your host for this very special stream on how to code C# is Neo Skinner. Hello everybody, hello. Make sure to go and follow if you aren't already, you get more awesome content like this. So, today, hello, welcome. I know it says Albion Mondays, and it's going to say that literally everywhere because I don't update my stream layouts very often. But today I am going to be teaching you how to code C#. This is going to be, well, a new sort of mini-series that I'm going to do with some other stuff, which is hopefully going to be cool. So next time I'm planning to do how to code HTML. Maybe we'll look at CSS as well. And then, so this how to code C#, just the C# section, will probably go into quite a few different streams. So you'll probably see that like maybe up to 2 streams from now we'll still be learning C#. So I'm planning to get it done in like 3 streams, but it might be more. It all depends on how much I can get done. So after you've learned it all, I'm going to provide you with some extra resources on what you can go and do to expand your knowledge and learn a bit more about it. And actually I'm going to start off with probably not what you're expecting. We're going to look at some pre-made code that I've made before, which has been specially designed for this stream to use lots and lots of different functions and things like that, which will hopefully all come together to help you to understand how to code in C#. So I'm not going to be explaining everything here, and this is by no means a definitive guide. I'm not even probably going to explain quite a lot of the different variables and things like that. I will just explain really what I think is important at this point for you to learn. And as I say, if you go on to have a look at the further learning I will provide at the end of these streams, then that will help you even more, because it will inform you of absolutely everything you can do with a command. In this case, I'm just showing you what they can do and what they are capable of, and then we're going to be coding in them. And so I'm going to start off with looking at an example, like I said earlier, and we're going to observe that, and we're going to look at that in pseudocode. So we're actually going to look at that and just observe what's happening and speak it out, put it down in logical steps, so then we can get some sort of idea about how the program is made. And then we're going to try and recreate the program, of course without seeing the source code. Now I'm going to see the source code for this, I coded it, but it's not, we're not going to focus on looking at the source code and trying to understand it. I'm rather going to code it step by step, and I'm going to show you exactly how I would go about coding something like that, and how you can do that too. And so I'm going to show quite a lot of stuff in this stream. So I'm going to show you how to comment your work, and I'm going to show you how to debug it, I'm going to show you how to create projects, I'm going to show you all of this stuff, and that's all coming up. So I'm going to show you multiple projects after we've done this main one, with the goal being to give you lots of different functions and variables that you can then go off and use in your own work. And I'm actually going to give you some suggested things that you can try to code afterwards, which are only suggestions. I'm not going to give you any homework whatsoever for this because I don't feel like I should. But first of all, for this stream, if you've seen the notice that I put out in the news channel, you will see that you are going to need a text editor, and I will recommend VS Code, and I'm going to be using VS Code here. You won't be able to use the debug functionality for that, I'll explain why a little bit later. Then you're also going to need the .NET framework. I'm going to be using the very latest pre-release of version 6.0, but any should work because we aren't using any functions here that are particularly hardware intensive or won't be enabled in different versions. So let's hop across very quickly to our other desktop. This one's been pre-prepared for us, as you can see. Compact is a lovely background. I'm just going to do a quick check. I always do this. I always like to make sure that we are right on track, and I am showing you the right screen at the moment. So just bear with. Which I absolutely am. Cool. I always like to make sure that I'm showing you the right screen because that really does help. So, as you saw, this is our terminal. So, this is the source code for the project. This may look rather daunting to begin with. Lots of it actually won't work in here because I've tried multiple things and it doesn't work, but I'm just showing you. This is an example of debugging and things like that, so that is cool. So, this is our terminal, okay. I've got this open to the directory of the project, which you can see is this one just here. All of this source code is available via OneDrive. I shared that with you earlier. Go and check the chat history on general if you haven't already seen that. So, what I'm going to do here is just start the program, okay, and it's going to start off by running program.cs, which then holds all of the code for the project. So let's start off by doing that, okay. So first of all, to run your project, you type .NET run, and you want to do that in the directory. So you can see that this project in particular asks for my name first. So let's explain what's happening in pseudocode. So it's cleared the display, so it's cleared everything that was currently printed to the terminal. And it's written to the screen, what's your name? And now it's requesting me to input my name. So I'm going to put that in there. And then you can see it has this string here, which tells you a welcome message. So it displays a welcome message. So it says, hello Neo, I'm your virtual assistant. The current time is 16:13 or 4:13. So this is, to get this message, what it first needs to do is it needs to grab my name, so get Neo, and that was cached at the previous process, okay, so it's cached my name from the input, and it's then added it to this message, and then before this message was sent, it's also got the time from the system, and it's added that into that message. And then it's now saying, where do you want to go? And it's requesting user input once again. So, let's go to the help list to begin with. So when I enter, all it's going to do is going to cache my entry to RAM, so that's where it stores all of my entries. And it's then going to take that and run whatever program I've selected. So in this case it's help, so it's going to cache that. It's then going to read what it's cached, and that says help, and because it's recognised that it says help, it's then going to run the selected program, which in that case is the help app. Now you can see all of the commands that are available. So contacts is the first one that we're going to take a look at. Again, it's the same process. So all the help app has done is it's just printed all of that to my screen, and then it runs the same bit again as it did right at the beginning. Where do you want to go? Request my user input. I've entered contacts, so I'm now going to enter it, and it's the same process where it caches what I've entered, and it then reads the cached entry, and then decides what program to take me to. So in this case it's contacts, so it's going to take me to contacts. Don't call these phone numbers, by the way, these are all fictitious. So you can see once again it has to get my name before it sends the message, and it has to get how many contacts are in the string. So that's not a pre-entered thing, it has to get that from a database which is contained at the top of the app. So you've got a nice database there, and it reads the database and goes, right, there's 10 entries there, and then it adds that to that string. and then you can see contacts, and then this is all from the database. It reads these, so these are all being stored individually, and so you take your first entry, that's Bob, so then it writes that to the console, then it takes the next, and then it writes it to the console, it takes the next and it writes it to the console. And then it once again requests where do you want to go. So it prints where do I want to go. So next location, I'm going to enter right in here. And remember, when I'm entering, it caches the user input, and then it gets the user input, reads the user input, and then takes you to the correct one, so game. So you can see straight away we've got a message displayed there. That will be a predefined message, there's nothing special involved there, it's just a predefined message. Then, do you want to play? Then it's requesting me to enter, so I'm going to say, yes, I want to play. And so then what it's going to do, it's a similar process, it's going to read my user input, it's going to cache the user input, then it's going to read the user input, and it's going to decide whether I put yes or no. So in this case it says yes, and then it's going to print a predefined term saying, unfortunately, this function is temporarily unavailable. And then it's going to display the same message, again, where do you want to go? So in this case, I've forgotten where I want to go, so I'm going to put help, caches that, reads it, puts you to the right screen. In this case, let's go to time then, which is the same as clock. So you can see multiple commands there, so you instantly know, oh yeah, you can do it in uppercase, lowercase, and you've got two things that you can enter for the same command. So enter, and then before this goes, then it needs to get all of the strings that it uses, so it needs to get the current time, it needs to get the day, it needs to get the day as a number, and then it needs to get the month, and then it needs to get the year. And then it adds all of those to the string, which is the current time string that you see just up here. Once again, where do you want to go? I'm going to write my user input there, and it's going to perform that function. So it caches that, and then it reads it, and then it runs this necessary piece of code in the background. So in exit, it's just going to clear the console and put me back to there once again. So you can see that was really quite a simple example, but it performs many functions. And the functions that you've seen, the way I've integrated those isn't necessarily going to be the way in which you would expect them to be entered. It's the way that I've entered them to really optimise the amount that I'm going to teach you in this session. So first things first, what we're going to do is you're going to say this is a step that you are now all going to do on your machine if you want to work along with us. Okay, you are going to navigate to the directory that you want your project in your terminal. I'm just clearing it for you there. Okay, so I'm going to put my project in there, and then we're going to create it. So we're going to type .NET, and then we're going to type new, so it's going to create a new project, and it's going to be a console-based project, and then you're going to enter what you want to call it just in here. So what should I call this? I'll just call this learn to code. Okay, so you can see .NET /new /console /-o learn to code. So you can put anything you want in here, and that's just going to be the name of your project. You can't change your name of the project halfway through. It doesn't work like that. So now once we've run that command, it's going to create all of the information that's necessary. And let's start the project. So we can see learn to code, it's created the directory. We're just going to load up program.cs. So first things first, I'm going to navigate to it on our terminal. So cd learn to code. I'm using Windows here. In theory these steps should work on whatever machine. but I'm not sure. I'm just using a Windows machine, so if you haven't got a Windows machine, I'm sorry, but you should probably know the commands for this already. So, go on to the right directory. So you can see by default, it's already got the code in there to be able to print hello world to your console. So the reason it takes a while to load up the text is because it's not an interpreted language, it's a compiled language, and which means it has to take everything that's involved in the project and compile it to get an executable before it can run it. So that's all that step is. So let's analyse that starting program, okay? So we're going to ignore all of this section to begin with. We're just going to focus on this line here. Okay, so you can see console. That's the namespace of the piece of code there. So you can see it's going to write a line. It's going to write a line to the console. Okay, so console.writeLine. Easy enough, yeah? And then you do parentheses, and the parentheses tell the bits of code that tells you what it's going to print to the console. So in this case, you can see you've got your two quote marks here with your hello world. So hello world is the text that you want to print. So let's just, then you have your semicolon on the end, which is then saying, right, that's the end of that line of code. So that signifies the end of the line of code. And we're going to learn a bit more about what different pieces of code end with in different situations a little bit later. So first test, we're going to remove the quote marks from here. Okay, and I want you to do this all with me at home. So now, if we run this, we're going to see your first error that you're going to run into. Okay. So you can see syntax error. There's a comma expected, and it tells you just in here. You can see line 9, character 37. So we go to our line 9, character 37, comma. Okay. Let's test that. So I'm just basically giving you the basic understanding of some errors you can get and how you mediate that. So now you can see the name hello does not exist in current context, and the name world does not exist in the current context. Okay, so now you're going to learn what else can you put in there. So let's take our welcome message, okay? First of all, I'm messing up now. So let's say that we wanted to print the welcome message, okay? So we're going to start off with a new bit of code, okay? So we're going to start off with a string, and our string is going to be called welcome, and that is going to then equal, we're going to put this in quotation marks, hello, I'm your virtual assistant. Okay, and now in this box just here, in the parentheses, we're just going to put welcome. So we specified the string, so we specified the value of the string up here, and then we're going to print the value of the string to the console just down here. Is there anything anyone doesn't get so far? No? Okay, good. So now, always make sure, put your semicolon on the end. Okay? And now we're going to go and test that, okay? So, .NET run. And if this works, you've just successfully written your first line of C# code. hello, I am your virtual assistant. That's worked. So, the reason that works is because, as I explained earlier, you've said, this is going to be a string value. This is going to be a string, okay? String name, welcome. And our string is going to equal, so this is what it does, in quote marks, hello, I'm your virtual assistant. So that's what the string is. Hello, I'm your virtual assistant. And then we've got our semicolon on the end, signify the end of the line of code. Next line of code specifies this is going to output to the console, or going to involve the console. What's it going to do? That's specified by the dot. It's going to write a line to the console. What line is it going to write? Specified in parentheses. Well, it's going to reference the string that we've written up here under welcome, and it's going to print this bit of text here to the console, and then specify the end of the line of code. That should all make sense so far. Although it doesn't, because I've got my face in the way. Done it again. So, yeah, let's quickly hop back across. I thought I'd do something like that. So I'm going to recap that, because of course I forgot to change my scene. Silly person. So, what did I do? So, I was talking, you know, hello world. It says that wasn't implemented. So, what this is now is it thinks that these are variables, okay? It thinks both of these are variables, okay? So, okay, let's get a variable involved. Let's start our very first variable. First variable, welcome, okay? So what is welcome as a variable going to be? Well, it's going to be a string. So we're going to create a string variable. And as always, please do this along with me at home. What's our string name going to be? Well, it's going to be welcome, as we specified down here. So that means that we can then call that string, we can then call that variable with the word welcome. So what is the string going to be? Equals, string is. And then we're going to put quotation marks surrounding it, okay? So quotation marks is just going to say, right, this is text. This is text that you're going to print whenever this welcome string is referenced. So we've got this string. So what's going to be contained in it? Well, let's go, hello. I'm your virtual assistant. Okay, so you can see, and we're going to end that with a semicolon. So we're going to end it with a semicolon to signify the end of that line of code. So now, console.writeLine, this was here before, so it's going to say to the console, so it involves the console in some way, the command is, and that's signified by the dot, write line. So it's going to write a line to the console. What's that line going to be? Well, that's specified in the parentheses. It's going to be welcome. So it references the string up here, welcome, and so it basically takes this bit of information here, takes out the quote marks on either side, and prints that to the terminal. So let's see that working, shall we? As always, .NET run. Hello, I'm your virtual assistant. You can see that line of code has successfully worked. Okay, so what else did we have in our example piece of code to begin with, okay? what should we have? So you can see it asks for my name at the start. We're going to ignore this for the moment. Okay. So you can see, hello, I'm your virtual assistant. So we've missed out a dot there. So it should be a dot on there. So I'm just going to copy this exactly, but you don't have to, you can do what you want. And then it says, the current time is that. Okay, so we're going to get that string written first, based around what we know, okay? So, for your information, you can put quote marks around items, like that, in these boxes, and that will just write that to the console, as you would expect. But in this example, I'm doing it with strings because I want to teach you that skill of using strings. And if you use strings, it has its own benefits as well. So we're not going to actually create a new string, we're going to modify this one. We're going to modify it with some special information, okay? So we're going to use a break character, which in this case is a backslash. And what are we going to break it with? An N. So it's going to create a new line. Backslash N is a new line. I'm going to do another one, just in there. Hello, I'm your virtual assistant. So what's our next line going to be? The current time is whatever the time is. So let's just test that to begin with. Also, probably should have said earlier, if you don't have autosave on your text editor, you will need to save this in between. Mine has autosave, that's why I'm using it. So let's exit there, and let's go back to our previous project, just here. That achieved nothing, I was supposed to type CLS. There we go, right. So now if we run it, you can see we get the one line from the string, and then we get another line from the string. So that replicates what we can see. So now, instead of this blah section, we need to actually write the code to grab the time, okay? So instead of a string, we are going to want a variable. What are we going to name this one? Well, you can see date and time. So I'm referencing the source code here. I don't remember this off by heart. You don't have to remember it off by heart. I'm not making you remember it off by heart, okay? So we're just going to call our variable date and time. And what's that going to equal? Well, in this case, it's going to equal date time now. Okay, so that's how you would get the date and time now. Okay, so we now have a var which is date time. Okay, so if we want to include that in this piece of text here, we have to put a $sign at the front of it. So that just means that we can include other stuff in here. So the current time is, and then to signify, we're going to use braces either side, and then we can use our date and time just in there, just like that. Okay. And now if we run that, you should see we get our date and time in there. Okay. But it's not quite right, okay? It just, you know, it tells us the date and then it tells us the time with seconds. That's not quite what we want, okay? So we're going to set a new variable, which is just time, okay? And it's important to note that when we create variables, that was what I did, yeah. It's important to note that when we create variables, we want to use something called Camel Case. Okay, so let's just say down here. So Camel Case do this in capital letters. Sorry, my text doesn't like me to do. So Camel Case basically means that the first word is lowercase. Okay, you do the first word lowercase, and then the second word starts with an uppercase letter, and it carries on like that. Okay, and when you're naming variables, you never start it with a 1, you never start it with numbers, okay? So you don't use any numbers. You can use numbers anywhere else in the string, but you cannot use them at the start. Okay? So other things you have to bear in mind, you can't use things like, so you can't create a variable with the name string because that's already being used, or a variable, because those are both commands, okay? So you can't create anything that looks like a command, otherwise it will be interpreted as a command. Again, you can't use any special characters, so you can't use a $sign or a hash, or, you know, an and, or a pipe, or a star, or anything like that, because those are all sort of mathematical operations, so you can't use plus or minus either, because those are mathematical operations. So, now that we've nailed that, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to take our date and time, and we're going to put it to a string. So we're going to go dot to string. What's our string going to be? We're going to specify that in parentheses. So our string is going to have the format hours, minutes, just like that. End of our command with a parenthesis just in there, semicolon rather. So now, instead of using date and time here, we can use time. And because what we've done is we've added a variable date and time, which is our date and time now, and then we've taken that variable and created another variable called time, in which we've referenced that, and we've said, take it to the string, in which you have hours and minutes, just like that. And so now, if we run that on our terminal, as you can see, we have the current time displayed in there. Now, it doesn't live update, and this is something else that I'm going to talk about now. So far you've seen, you know, we've got lovely neat code here. Now, something that you have to bear in mind with code is it won't work, okay? And I'm going to give you an example of this. It won't work if I put that down there, okay? If I now try and run our command, it's raining outside, please ignore that. You will see cannot use local variable time, and that's because you've declared the variable after it's been used, okay? So this all works sequentially, so it will work from the top and it will work its way down, so it will do this command, then this command, and then this command, and then this command. And if you want to reference anything, you have to make sure that the thing you're referencing is above the thing that's referencing it. Otherwise it won't work. Excuse the terrible pouring rain outside. Okay, that's quite loud. So now let's add a name in there, okay? And we're going to need to get the name before we do anything else. So before we display the welcome message, we need to get their name. How are we going to get their name? Well, we're going to use this bit of code up here. Just ignore my scrolling, ignore stuff like that. Because it's not really valid. So we're going to create a new string. I'm going to just put this up with the date and time on. I'm going to call this username text. So what's that going to equal? Well, let's say, what's your name? And it's important we're going to put a space afterwards so that they can then type it in properly. So now with this console.WriteLine string, we're going to put in console.WriteLine username text. So we're actually going to move this bit up to here. Okay, and what I'm doing is I'm just adding spacing here, just so that you can see it easier. It's generally a good idea to add spacing like this, to make it very clear what exactly is happening and separate your items if you're still following along. So I'm just going to quickly pop back to me. Just like so. Hello. Is everyone following along? Everyone understand it so far? No answers. I'm going to take that as a yes. So welcome back. So we've got our welcome, what's your name string, okay? So if we do .NET run, you can see because we've used name in there. Hold on, I'm just going to I don't think we have a viewer will learn from this. I don't know, if you're struggling with anything then please say. I'm trying to explain everything the best I absolutely can. So I'm breaking it down to basics at the moment, but I will go back through exactly what everything is doing in a minute. So just bear with just a moment. Okay, there we go. So let's try that once more. So you can see, what's your name? Hello name, I'm your virtual assistant, the current time is blah blah blah. So, you know, we've asked what's the name. So now we obviously need some form of input to make that all work, okay? So we're gonna grab our input, okay? So we're going to create our string just at the top here. No, let's create our string down here. So string, we're going to create a new string called name. And we're just going to do that from console.readLine. Just like so, that should be all that we need in there. Just going to double check, and it is, just like that. So now we can then encase this in our lovely braces, just like that. And let's see what that does. You can now see, ask for our name. Neo. Hello Neo, I'm your virtual assistant. The current time is 4:44. So, in this space of time, just to recap, we've observed an example. We've broken down an example into pseudocode. We've then tried to make our example. We've started off using strings, and we've learned how to get the time and date. We've learned how to get a user's name and accept a user input. And we've learned how to write to the console. So now I'm going to explain it in a bit more detail how everything works. Okay, if you don't understand any of this, then by all means come back and watch it again. If you still don't understand, then don't worry. There will be some higher level stuff that I will add afterwards as to exactly how it works. So you can see. So we're going to ignore once again all of this bit of code up here. This bit of code is not important, it's auto-generated, and it's not important for the moment. All that you need to know is that you have to write your code inside this section just here. So, what's the first thing that it does? It creates a new variable. So that's represented with var. So I'm going to make notes at the bottom. let me sorry. I want to make sure this is absolutely correct for you. So yeah, just needed to check something, just 5 seconds. Okay, so we're back. So variable is VAR, okay, and after you've declared a variable, you need to declare the name of the variable. So what's the name of our variable? Date and time. So our date and time variable, what does that equal? So equals is just an equals sign. And that equals the date and time now. So let's run through that command quick. So date and time. Gets the date and time. And what does it get it in? In this format. Hold on, let me sorry, I'm just going to, there we go. I just need to make sure it's commented out. There we go. So it gets the date and time in what format? So date, so day, month, so your month has to be lowercase, and your year has to be capitalised. No, month is capital, nothing else is. Always get that wrong. So it gets it in this format originally. Day, month, year. But then it gets hours, minutes, seconds. Just like that. So that's the default format that it uses. Okay. So you must use a semicolon, which is one of those, after every line of code. You must use a semicolon after every line of code. Blank space you don't need to, but after every line of code you need to use a semicolon. And that's the wrong way around. I'm just going to, there we go. I'm just going to have more detail. So a variable is a store of information in this case, okay? So you can see we created a variable, we've named it date and time. Okay, so we've created a store of information that we've named date and time. And that can then be used anywhere else in the code by just writing date and time. And that equals date and time, which gets the date and time in this format. Day, month, year, hours, minutes, seconds. And it displays it exactly like that. And then you've used a semicolon after every line of code. Okay. So a period, which is just a single dot, represents a subcategory of code. So you've defined your category, so let's take date and time as an example. So, e.g. date and time. So date and time is your, let's say, your category. So date and time is your category. and we've put our period just there. So our period then represents, where's my, I'm just going to add more spacing here. So you can imagine that like a subcategory selector. So you have to include that piece of code to represent that there's being a subcategory selected. Start that with a capital letter, just like that, okay. And then now is then our subcategory. So that is what we're using, okay? So we've got date time, so that's our category of code. That's the type of code. And then our dot says that there's going to be a subcategory. This is the subcategory of inside that category that we are using. And then now is our subcategory. Now there's loads of different subcategories for every different type of code. I'm only showing you certain ones. So let's do another one. So in this case, let's use console. So console is our category. Then we're going to use our subcategory selector. So then what is our subcategory in this case? Well, I'm going to give the example of WriteLine. So you can imagine WriteLine being like a subcategory of code. And I've used double finger spaces in there. Sorry, I'm just being pedantic now. Okay. So we've got our category and our subcategory selector and then our subcategory. So you've said, right, this is going to involve the console. Okay, that's going to involve the console. Subcategory selector. Okay, this is what the subcategory is going to be. The subcategory follows this dot. What's the subcategory? WriteLine. Okay, we're going to write a line to the console. Now, in some cases you're going to need additional information. I'm just going to call it additional information for these purposes. Okay, so that's our additional information just in there. So your additional information goes in parentheses, goes in brackets afterwards, okay? So in this case, console.WriteLine, we haven't told it what we want to write, okay? So the parentheses signify that inside here, this is our additional information, this is what we are going to write to the console. And to do that, you use quotation marks. So you use quotation marks to represent text. So quotation, so let's just call this text from now. No, quotation mark. So quotation mark prefixes
are an @ symbol, and that is used for, so quotation mark prefixes is an @ symbol for literal text, so that is pre-formatted text, and use a $sign for text including variables. So in this case we are going to name variables objects, okay? Objects, things, classes. Actually, no, I'm going to rename it variables for the moment. So yeah, ignore the objects thing, but they are technically known as objects because they store information, but we are going to call them variables at the moment. So it's for text including variables, and to do that you would then use braces to include variables in text. And I spelt braces terribly there. So a variable is a store of information. Date time gets the date and time in this format. You must use a semicolon after every line of code, and a period represents a subcategory of code. So for example, date time is your category. A period says, right, there's going to be a subcategory after this, and then the now bit says, well, that's the subcategory, that's what you're doing inside this category of code. Console, that's your category. Subcategory selector. What is our subcategory? Right line. And then additional information goes in parentheses. So in this case, additional information for this is quotation marks. You use quotation marks to represent text. And quotation mark prefixes that you can use, and we've used up here in this situation, is an @ symbol for literal text. So that is pre-formatted text. So that means that you can use enter, you can use returns, you can use tabs, you can use spaces. All of your styling will be kept. And then you use a $sign for including variables in your text. And how you would include variables in your text is to use braces. And then you just use a brace and the variable name. Braces to include variables in text. So for clarification, put the variable name inside the braces. Okay, so that is most of it. Okay, so what have we got next? Well, we've got a string. So a string is just a piece of text, and a string is a variable, and I am spelling horrendously. Okay, so a string is a piece of text, and a piece of text is a variable. It's a variable which is a store of information, so it's storing a piece of text under a lovely name, which in this case is a username text. And then we've got our equal sign. What does that equal? What's your name? Then we've used a semicolon to end off. So that all makes sense. I hope all that all makes sense. Does that all make sense to everyone? Okay. So we know what this is, and we know what this is. I think that pretty much explains it all pretty well. So if we go, if I explain So console category for doing things to the console. Right line. Write a line of text. In this case, we're writing it to the console, okay? And the rest of it is pretty self-explanatory. So now you must use Camel Case for variable names. E.g. name, e.g. date and time. So always starts with a lowercase, letter and uses uppercase for the first letter of subsequent words. Just like that. Variable names can also not include special symbols. Yes, you're seeing my Twitter feed. So special symbols like an @ sign, a $sign, plus sign, a minus sign, a pipe, a backward slash, an underscore, an asterisk, that sort of thing. And variable names cannot start with a number. You must declare variables before you use them in operations. I think all of that makes sense so far, so I'm going to keep that up on the screen for just a moment. So that is basically everything that you have learned so far. And I am going to, I think, I'm going to end off this stream just here. So come back again next Thursday from 4 till 5, where I will be explaining more about C#. If you didn't understand anything during this stream, don't hesitate to, look it up or to practice, or do whatever you want, but make sure to get some practice in using this kind of stuff. There'll be more practice next time. This was just a simple example using getting some information, saving it as variables, and then printing that alongside other text
to there, and then you also take user input and things like that. So I hope this has been informative to you. By all means, feel free to go and watch this stream back and keep practicing until you get this, until you fully understand this section. So you can then come back next Thursday fully understanding everything that I've been speaking about in this stream. Okay, without further ado, I will see you next Thursday. Goodbye.